Imagine for a moment that you're in a situation in which lives are on the line. You've got a gun or multiple guns trained on you, civilians, or both. The agitator is morally bankrupt or too stubborn to abandon their endeavor. You've got a gun on your hip, the speed to unholster it, and the skills to use it without bringing harm to yourself or the civilians. What do you do? For most people, the answer would be simple. You shoot the bad guys before they can shoot you. If you've got the absolute confidence that you'll come out on top without collateral damage, why even consider it? The quickest route to safety would be to utilize your skills to remove the aggressors from the equation entirely. As a society, we're taught it's an eat or be eaten world. Through our culture, American culture specifically, we're taught that if it comes down to a choice between you or them, choose yourself. But what if choosing between us or them isn't an option? What if the only choice available, the only choice you've allowed for yourself, was us and them? What if the only victory condition you ever recognized as a true win was one in which everyone got to walk away with their lives intact, bad guys included? What if the only choice you gave yourself in every situation was to save everyone? Such is the constant dilemma for the subject of today's video, Vash the Stampede of the anime Trigun. I've been wanting to talk about this show for a little while, and after a fresh rewatch, I knew I needed to spend some time on it. There will be some story spoilers, so there's your warning. If you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe, both really help more than you think and push the YouTube's algorithm to recommend my content to others who may be interested. Stick around to the very end where I have a couple of things I want to say since we've passed the 1,000 subscriber milestone. For the time being, onward to today's discussion. Gunsmoke is a sandy, desert-covered planet akin to the Wild West of days long gone. It's littered with thugs, gangs, and shootouts. Of course, there are also plenty of common folk just doing their best to survive the hellish wasteland. Traveling the world on his own, for his own reasons, is a man named Vash the Stampede. He is also known as the Humanoid Typhoon, a nickname given to him after completely destroying one of Gunsmoke's few massive cities. Following the destruction of the city, a $60 billion double-dollar bounty is placed on his head, essentially making him the most wanted man on the planet. You'd think with nicknames like those and a bounty so outrageously high that Vash would be a cold-blooded warmonger. In fact, you wouldn't be alone in that assumption, as most of the planet's residents go into a panic at the mere mention of his name. Like with real life, bad news travels fast on the planet of Gunsmoke. There isn't a person alive who doesn't know and fear his name. Interestingly enough, though, is the fact that very few people even know what Vash looks like. He's more characterized by his unparalleled destruction and misfortune he leaves in his wake. To this end, throughout the series, we see so many different criminals hijacking his name to further their own goals. The fear of Vash is so real that most people don't even consider being skeptical, since to them, the alternative is to incur the wrath of the Humanoid Typhoon. But in truth, the Vash we come to know is drastically different from both the criminals who pretend to be him, as well as the rumors and stories abound that became the stuff of nightmares for the average citizen. When we first meet Vash, he's just minding his own business, eating in a small pub before a band of thugs show up and wreck the place, looking to kill him and claim the bounty on his head. Right off the bat, we're shown that Vash prefers to avoid conflict if he can, but if he can't, he clings to non-lethal ways of fighting back. His most traveled route is through diplomacy or creativity, often coupled with a purposeful aloofness. As stated earlier, lots of destruction tends to follow Vash in the form of massive property damage. This nearly unbroken chain of awful luck only adds to his horrible reputation, leading to most disasters being blamed on him, many of which are either ridiculous accidents or just straight up flukes of nature. It's this compounding collateral damage that places him in contact with Meryl and Millie, two women from an insurance agency that are tasked with locating Vash and shadowing him in the hopes of minimizing insurance claims and further damage. The two ladies, Meryl specifically, become the equivalent of an audience surrogate, seeing firsthand the many layers to the onion that is Vash the Stampede as they're pulled back. Even she can't believe he's the Humanoid Typhoon for the first portion of their journey together. Vash's incessant goofiness and carefree attitude make it difficult for Meryl to genuinely believe he is who he says he is. Slowly but surely as time goes on, she realizes that he truly is the Humanoid Typhoon and that there is much more to him than meets the eye. Vash consistently places himself in harm's way for the well-being of others. He has a strong sense of right and wrong, and he frequently appeals to the humanity in anyone that will listen to him. Never asking for anything in return except for maybe food, Vash offers his assistance to anyone in need. But as you may have noticed, we haven't yet circled back to the premise of our opening exercise. What makes Trigun so engrossing to watch is Vash the Stampede's unwillingness to do unnecessary harm, and even more importantly, his outright refusal to take a life. As we've established, Gunsmoke isn't the most peaceful planet, and as such, most people carry a firearm of some sort. On such a harsh planet, few who pick up a gun are unwilling to shoot to kill. Not Vash though. Each situation is a new puzzle to solve for the outlaw. Each puzzle is only complete if everyone walks away alive, no exceptions. Even when Vash is at a tangible disadvantage and his enemies pose a clear and present danger, he stands his ground and elects to do no harm. Over the course of the series, we see plain as day that Vash is thrown into a myriad of situations that could have easily been subverted with a few well-placed shots from his revolver. There are no shortage of bandits that want his head on a spike, and the economic conditions of the smaller towns is often dire enough to cause otherwise peaceful citizens to turn their guns on him. No matter how stacked the deck is, though, Vash never buckles. Vash's unwillingness to take a life extends outward to those around him, to both strangers and allies alike. In episode 10, there's a gunslinger competition that Vash is unknowingly entered in by a supporting character named Wolfwood. After a set of disqualifiers to thin the herd a bit with some simple bottle shooting, the competitors are pitted against one another in one-on-one quick draws. These rounds aren't shackled by the same no-killing policy that Vash lives by, so under normal circumstances, we'd expect plenty of these random participants to kill each other. However, in a demonstration of both his compassion and inhuman skill, Vash throws small pebbles at the perfect instant with surgical precision from the sidelines, knocking a bullet just far enough off its intended path to prevent the round's loser from being killed. Later on, we see Wolfwood, who is also a highly skilled gunslinger in his own right, say this about Vash when placed in a tight situation in which the most logical option for their survival chance would be to abandon a hostage.
けどな、困った時にそんなんは嫌や言うて、泣きながら全員を助けようとする奴がおるねん。体中傷だらけにしながら、それでも立ち上がる男がな。
Vash's compassion runs deeper than the hate or desperation of Gunsmoke's denizens, and while he empathizes with those who seek to kill or arrest him for the good of their community, he refuses to allow himself to be stopped on his journey. On several occasions, with his back to the wall, Vash pleads with his opponents or would-be captives not to force him to shoot. In one case, after unintentionally injuring an enemy that caught him by surprise, Vash quickly begins to administer first aid, and it's abundantly clear that he was not pleased with himself for his mistake. Life is precious to him thanks to the teachings and memories of a woman named Rem. Rem is a character anchored to Vash's outlook on life. She essentially raised him and instilled in him a love and appreciation for life. It's through her that he internalizes the idea that no one has the right to take the life of another. After her death, Vash immortalized her through adopting her philosophy and extending an endless stream of compassion to others. It was all he could do to keep her memory alive in his heart. Anything else, and he fears he'd lose that last link to her. Pivoting just a little bit, you'd be forgiven for thinking Vash is human. I know I'd completely forgotten about it until rewatching it, but that element adds another layer of tragedy to Vash's story. With the exception of his adversary, Vash is, in his own way, alone in the world. His lifespan is far, far longer than that of an average human, so he's met many faces, watched them grow, and ultimately die. At roughly 130 years old, if I'm remembering correctly, Vash has accumulated so many memories, both good and bad, that it's all but certain those past experiences we aren't shown in detail also play into his chosen path in life. It's no exaggeration to say he's watched the world of Gunsmoke become what it is over the course of his life, yet at no point does he lose sight of the quiet resolve born of Rem's influence and loss. That burning drive to cling to Rem's memory while hunting for his longtime adversary kept Vash the man he is through the years on Gunsmoke, going from situation to situation hoping to leave the world a better place one solution at a time. That choice hasn't been easy on Vash physically or emotionally. We see late in the series that Vash's body is covered nearly head to toe in gruesome scars, a testament to his willingness to accept bodily harm if it means achieving a peaceful resolution to a conflict. And it's not difficult to surmise that Vash's over-the-top goofiness and dedication to peace is a well-crafted facade to motivate and elevate the moods of others in an effort to shield the planet's citizens from experiencing the same pain he harbors. Vash is a bona fide example of hiding behind one's own smile. On the flip side of that smile, as the story goes on, we begin to understand why Vash prefers to travel alone. In his mind, he brings grave misfortune to those around him, and he'd rather suffer a life of solitude than continue losing people. It's a facet of the emotional strain on the man that we don't truly get a peek at until about halfway through the series. Naturally, as Trigun's narrative progresses, we're forced to watch the strength of Vash's ideals hold firm against increasingly dire situations with increasingly higher risks. While the show starts off with the traveler getting caught up in petty street crimes, hijackings, and even entire towns trying to turn him into Swiss cheese, it ramps up to instances of town populations vanishing, genuine struggles of grey morality, piles of bodies, and the looming threat of terrifyingly skilled adversaries out for his head. Each situation puts Vash in the exact same position with varying degrees of consequence by asking the same two questions. Will you draw your gun, and will you shoot to kill? Vash's answer to the first question varies, as pointing his gun is sometimes enough to bluff an enemy into backing down from a potential fight with the Humanoid Typhoon. But the second question is always met with a resounding no. Even when pulling the trigger can genuinely save the lives of countless people, Vash always remembers that the person he'd be shooting has a life too, and despite any horrific acts carried out by the person, if they're willing to acknowledge that they've made a mistake and move forward with their lives, there's hope for them to change. That possibility in itself is precious to Vash. Many of Vash's future enemies come to realize this fracture in the otherwise sturdy persona of the Humanoid Typhoon and seek to exploit it shortly after it comes to light. In episode 12, the first in a slew of assassins shows himself to Vash, attempting to gun him down in order to secure his own freedom. But Vash manages to stay just out of his reach while also making sure to remove any civilians from harm's way. Once the assassin picks up on this, he immediately turns his guns on the town's residents, knowing that there wasn't enough time for Vash to presumably save them all. And with the malice you'd expect from an anime villain, he slaughters dozens of civilians. Vash's response to this massacre gives us a passing peek into his reason for traveling alone, as stated earlier, but also the very real rage he's capable of when lives are so dismissively snuffed out. Vash isn't the kind of person to witness a death and just move on. Throughout his entire, deceptively long journey, he carries all of those lives lost on his shoulder every moment of every day. Each death makes the weight of his gun just that much heavier, the option of shooting to kill just that much less acceptable. It isn't just civilian deaths that fortify his resolve either. When an adversary falls, Vash laments their passing all the same. He finds the same fury surfacing in the latter half of the series, when two of the assassins that he defeated but allowed to live were subsequently killed by one of their peers for their failure and left on display for Vash to find. And when an enemy down the line is bested by Vash and turns the gun on himself, Vash remarks that he failed to save another life when chatting with Wolfwood. And then there's the conflict with Legato, which I do want to mention but don't want to ruin for those who plan to watch the show. So skip to this timecode to avoid this particular spoiler. It's best experienced personally and not through having some asshat describe it to you poorly. I'll give you a few seconds to decide. Alright, Legato is the character that works as the right hand for Vash's primary adversary. He's classic anime villain 101, eloquent, arrogant, likes to monologue, absurdly dressed, but also very dangerous. Throughout the series, he emerges as the threat the audience can really hone in on, taking opportunities to taunt, mock, and challenge Vash, which begins increasing our hero's anxiety levels. We get to see firsthand just how dangerous Legato is when he uses his own potent power of suggestion to force a group of ruffians to shoot themselves and each other against their will. He even pulls off this same mental assault on Vash, causing him to destroy another city in the same vein as the one that landed the $60 billion double-dollar bounty on his head. This time though, he also puts a hole in the moon, and the insurance agency that handles the claims for basically all of the planet's citizens labeled Vash as the first human act of God, only further adding to the legend of the Humanoid Typhoon. But where the immovable object meets the unstoppable force comes into harsh reality is when Legato puts Vash in a lose-lose situation when he assumes control of the minds of an entire town and captures Meryl and Millie. When Vash confronts Legato, he's told that he only has two options. A. Hold tight to his ideals by refraining from killing Legato, allowing the women to be murdered by the mind-controlled mob, or B. Save the girls by betraying his ideals and killing Legato. Legato could have easily used his power to force Vash to kill him, but there was power in making our hero make the decision himself. Legato, acting on the directive of Vash's primary adversary, wanted to make Vash's life a living hell. He properly concluded that the best way to do that would be to leave Vash no choice but to kill someone. Legato made it clear that the only way the situation would conclude was if Vash made a decision or failed to make a decision. Time was a factor and talking wasn't an option, so realistically, to save the lives of the women he'd spent so much time traveling alongside, there truly wasn't any other option but to kill Legato. Vash couldn't harm the mob because they were under the influence of Legato, and even if he was willing to, Legato had him locked right where he wanted him. This tense standoff culminates in Vash taking Legato's life with a single gunshot to the head, rescuing his friends but shattering his own spirit in the process. When Vash wakes up after passing out from his wounds, we're made to bear witness to the realization of what he's done after the memories return to him. It's a heartbreaking moment for a character we've watched try so damn hard to avoid that very scenario. Welcome back to those who skipped ahead. This struggle of opposing forces, the precious gift of life versus the harsh indifference of life, the strength to show compassion versus the grit to do what you must to survive, the value and challenges of hope versus the persistence of desperation and despair. Trigun finds a way to weave all of these into Vash's narrative without ever feeling disingenuous or ham-fisted. It's funny, it's somber, it's intense, it's beautiful, and it's optimistic in its outlook on how we can treat one another. Rem once told Vash that she's glad the ticket she was given at birth was blank, which simply means she's happy she gets to decide for herself what path she'll take in life. It's a statement that Vash holds close to his heart, and frankly, one that we all should. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the Green Goblin tells Spider-Man that we are who we choose to be. It's one of my favorite quotes from that film and cinema in general because on some level, he was right. While we're all an amalgamation of the things we've experienced in life, we don't have to allow those things to define us forever. We can choose to be more, to be better. Despite the hardships that inevitably come with these traits, Vash the Stampede, the world's most wanted outlaw, feared by civilians and hunted by anyone and everyone looking to cash in, chose to be kind, to be compassionate, to be selfless, and to advocate for love and peace. That is the man the Humanoid Typhoon chose to be. And it's what makes Trigun a bittersweet yet optimistic anime. Hey there everyone. Well, we passed the 1,000 subscriber mark, which I'm over the moon about. I know I said the Chapter Black video would be next, but I also said in my horror video that I wanted to do something special if I reached 1k. Well, we hit that goal way faster than I was imagining, so I thought I'd have more time to plan something out. I actually had to start the Chapter Black video all over because my project file got corrupted somehow. So I figured I'd make a different video for the time being and then use the 1k milestone as a springboard for whatever happens next. So here's the deal with the Chapter Black video. I know some of you wanted an in-depth video in the same vein as the Dark Tournament, and initially I was against that because of just how long it took to make that video, since I also have a full-time job. But as I started working on the scaled down version and started rewatching that section of the show, I started to realize that there was so much I wanted to talk about. So I'm actually going to leave it up to you guys. I'm going to give you guys a choice. Do you want to see a full in-depth video in the similar style to the Dark Tournament video, or do you want me to just work on my original video? If you want a full-scale analysis, I will warn you now that video will take some time to get done, but it will get done. If you want the smaller video I was going to do, I can just do that, but it won't touch on many of the key aspects or moments of Chapter Black. I'm going to leave a link in the pinned comment to a straw poll you can use to cast your vote. I'm going to let the voting run for a couple of weeks, probably until the next video, to allow as many people to vote as possible, and in whatever video comes next, I'll let you guys know what the result is. I also plan on making a Discord server soon for those interested in keeping up to date on how videos are coming along, which videos are on the docket, chat with me and others who share similar tastes in anime and gaming, and you'll even be able to suggest topics you'd like me to see make a video about. When the server's up, I'll double back and add the invite link to every video description and pinned comment. I want to thank you guys again for joining me on this journey. I hope I can keep you guys entertained on the way to our next goal, which is 5k. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, all of which really help convince the algorithm to bless me and recommend my content to new viewers. Take care of yourselves out there, guys, and as always, thanks for watching.